I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. We continue our series with the partners, the colleagues at the African American Child Wellness Institute, talking about the healing work that we have to do in community. The African American Child Wellness Institute, led by Dr. Breveda Akinsanya and her team at Brakens Consultant, has a mission to discuss, discover, to resolve the issue of crisis counseling, the availability of counseling for people that are in crisis in our community. And one of the team members on the project is Daryl Gillespie. Brother Gillespie and I are both part of the team. My role is to do things like this, create these conversations and share the work, the mission, the strategies with you in the community and public, and to bring colleagues like Counselor Daryl Gillespie forward to talk about his work and how we are together hoping to bring mitigation and response strategies to the trauma, to the crisis experienced at the hand of COVID-19. Brother Daryl, good afternoon. Good to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing good, and thank you for having me, Mr. McFarlane.
Please call me Al, and so good to see you again. Let's start just by giving people a 101, just an introduction to your work, both as a therapist and counselor, but also equally important, your work in the ministry. You've got a mission and a mission, and you've tied them both together in the service of humanity, the service of community, the service of our families and of individuals. And I think it's just wonderful when we can align purpose and mission, calling and mission. And I think you represent the capacity to make that alignment so that it is seamless and vital and powerful, because the command that you operate from is a divine command. And you're also operating inside the expectation and the opportunity afforded by your training and your knowledge in counseling and therapy. So talk about what it is, how we align our mission and vision in serving our community in general. We'll come back and talk about COVID-19 in particular.
Well, I think on one hand, both these vocations were something that I really didn't think I would be in. And so, not to be long-winded, I am the son of a Pentecostal pastor and an elementary school teacher. So I believe learning and teaching and using different mechanisms to grow has always been part of my history. And so when you think about therapy, let's start with that, because I kind of got into the field in a funny kind of way. I was a preschool teacher. And I was a preschool teacher for the Urban League when we had our school where Summit Academy is now, right off of Olson Highway. And so we were teaching there, and they closed the preschool down, and Washburn Child Guidance was also in that same building. And so Washburn saw me working with those kids, and when we closed down, they offered me a job as a preschool teacher. And at that time, I didn't really realize how important it was to have males in early childhood. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got my start in mental health by working at Washburn. And along working at Washburn as a preschool day treatment teacher, it kind of introduced me into the mental health side, where really it just gave me some language to do what I was doing intuitively. And I think ministry and therapy kind of go hand in hand. I think sometimes church is therapeutic, just like therapy is supposed to be therapeutic. They all mean healing. Mm-hmm. And so my job has been to kind of direct and process and interact with people in a way that will help them do better or make better decisions. And I think one of the things that has been a gift I would say I have is the ability to build relationships quickly and to listen. And I think sometimes we have a whole lot of stuff going on in our community when you talk about trauma. But bigger than that, I think the coping mechanisms that we do to deal with our trauma is what really gets us in trouble. So being able to hear folks talk about what they do to cope. You know, the stuff that we don't tell anybody, that we hide, that we're scared to even admit. I think I serve as a trusting ear to hear that. Just as a pastor, I got to do that from a spiritual standpoint as well. So we intermingle these two practices to try to be an effective tool to help build community and help people heal.
Talk about your pastoral work, your church and your ministry.
So I am the pastor, Proverbs Christian Fellowship. We've been in existence for 17 years. We started in our home in South Minneapolis with about 8 people. We probably have a little bit under, probably about 100 members, I would say. But one of the things I always wanted to do was be an asset to the community. I've been community focused. If you don't know, I'm a product, or I'm a son-in-law of Mr. Busi and Notando Zulu. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of impact, moving here, not being from Minneapolis, I'm from Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. I moved here in '90. And so having that kind of impact of community building and working with folks in the community has just been a byproduct of our church. I believe the church has to go outside of the 4 walls. We cannot be just stuck talking to people who already believe. But we also have to have a mindset that the church has to pastor and love the community. Whether the community comes into our building or not, it's still our responsibility to take care of them. And so our church now, we were on 1515 Glenwood. We're now on 3210 Oliver Avenue North, right off of Laurie. And so ministry there's so much to do in ministry. There's so many needs. And I think church has to learn how to, and I hope you understand what I'm getting ready to say. We have to kind of deconstruct some of our traditional ways of doing church. Mm-hmm. Not that we change the Bible, but we change how we interact with so many different things that are going on. And how do we be an accepting, non-judgmental presence to help people come into just regular health? Then we can deal with the spiritual health when we get the natural health from again, coping mechanism, parenting, interacting with relationships, all of that. How do we help that grow and then start to beat them over the head with the Bible? Not beat them over the head, but help them learn
Sure.
how to really interpret the Bible for life application.
So let's switch back and forth seamlessly, because I think you do that in your work and in your being, in your presence. You know, what are the coping mechanisms you discover that our people turn to and utilize in stress in general? And are there any that are exaggerated under the twin pandemics, COVID-19, obviously, but also what we call the pandemic of 1619, the enduring pandemic of racial domination by white, what's the right word for it? White thought, white philosophy. Yeah.
I would say, I mean, we could say drinking and using drugs as a way of coping is still going on, and it has heightened in the midst of COVID-19. I would say even bigger than that is a negative mindset or a negative outlook where there seems to be no hope. And I think no hope leads to unwillingness to try, just a sense of instability, but also just a sense of just total being still, not in a way of being still and listening, but in a way of being still, of being numb, as if there's nothing I can do. So let me just give up. Let me not even try to make it. And I think those are the kind of mindsets that are hard to address, because it can be so easy for you and I to get on this show and talk about all the things that keep us down. Everywhere we look, there is racism, there is oppression, there's something that could just keep us down. And so trying to give a positive outlook is hard, because where in the world do we look and see something good happening for us? Mm-hmm. And so trying to instill some hope into a situation that looks hopeless, that's where some of this stuff crosses over. And I have to be wise enough to understand everybody doesn't believe in God. They don't trust in a higher power. They may have a spiritual belief that has no connection to that. And I still have to offer some type of hope because I believe there is hope. There is a way to get out of this situation. I think we have these vaccines. I mean, when you talk about a vaccine, on paper, that would look hopeful, but I have to deal with the Tuskegee Institute, more than that, the mistrust. Because I know people that don't trust anything that people shoot in their arms at the doctor because we really don't know. Am I being used as an experiment? Are you really treating me for real? And I don't care what anybody says, that is real because we really don't know. And so how do we speak to a pandemic that has a vaccine and we still don't trust it? But I think that speaks to the level of oppression and the level of needs that we have to, layers of stuff that we have to crack through with our own language, but even with our lives as being so-called healers or those who are first responders, we have to have a certain sense of organization or a certain sense of stability in our own self. So again, sometimes we as those who are helping have to make sure our coping mechanisms are in place, make sure we don't succumb to the negative thoughts, to all the things that are coming our way. And it seems like it's a never-ending battle, but I think it also speaks to the strength of who we are, because I don't think we've ever had a situation that has been hoisted upon us that we haven't overcome.
And part of the challenge is simply to remember we've got a track record of overcoming, and no matter how difficult or dangerous the situation presents itself, we in the long run and in history have survived and actually found a way to thrive where thriving seemed both impractical and impossible. And how do we keep telling ourselves that narrative, I think, is the important thing. And so you transitioned into mental health by starting a career as a preschool teacher. What got you prepared to teach preschool? How did you move to that profession? What was your training? And you mentioned you're from Champaign-Urbana. Tell me about where you started and what you were when you were. I'm just curious. When you were like 5 and 7 and 10 years old, what kind of life did you have, and what did you see for your future at that age?
Okay, so again, I was born to a Church of God in Christ pastor, Pentecostal. I said, but let's go and break it all the way down.
Be specific.
The Grand Old Church of God in Christ. That's where I grew up in.
Yep.
And so my mom was a teacher. I was in church an ungodly amount of time. It should have been against the law for as much time as I spent in church.
How can you be? How can you be in church an ungodly amount of time?
I'm getting ready to tell you.
Okay, all right.
And here's my early childhood education. To be 4, 5, and 6 and being in church for 5 and 6 hours and then coming back at night and being in church again, that is not age appropriate. We didn't have children's church. We didn't have any of that. We had Sunday school, we had church, and the pastor preached for a very long time. My dad was a long-winded preacher. My grandfather, let's keep it going. My grandfather was the bishop of Southeast Illinois jurisdiction. So not only did I have to be in church all the time, I was not allowed to do certain things. And so what helped me get to this point now, and I'll go back and forth. My mom is what I say was a very balanced woman, meaning she understood. She was a teacher, an early childhood teacher. And so she taught kindergarten and preschool. So she had that kind of mindset that says, we have these legalistic expectations, but I'm still going to give my children a chance to do things like go to a movie, play sports, and all that. So I was a basketball player. And so I was I ran track. I played baseball too. Baseball and track was in the same season. So I was doing a lot of athletics things. When my grandfather came to town, all that stuff stopped. So now you're building something that could make me hate the church. because
what town was your grandfather in?
he was in Carbondale, Illinois.
And you're in Champaign, Urbana. Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at geographically, if you look at how long Carbondale was about 3.5 hours from Champaign. So it's Southern Illinois. And my grandfather was pastoring my grandfather was bishoping Central Illinois, which is another story, but those expectations. And so then my father passed away when I was 10. And I'm the oldest of 3 kids. And so kind of in our house was church, and education was very, very important as well. And so my mom let us play sports too. And so kind of growing up, it was church, some sports, and education. It's also, my mom made me learn how to play an instrument. My mom had a bachelor's degree in agriculture and a master's degree in education. So constantly teaching us the importance of education. All three of my siblings, all 3 of us currently now, all 3 working on our doctorate degrees. So all 3 of us have bachelor's and master's. I'm not saying that to pat us on the back. What I'm saying is that's how much academics and education was poured into us. Not only that, the love of the church. All of us are still in the church and serving vital roles in our church as well. So she says a single parent can do this because she remarried, and my stepfather passed away too. I have lost 2 fathers. So you talk about male role models. She did a good job of having males in my life to show me the way. When I was a junior in high school, I visited Minnesota to visit my aunt and my cousin. I fell in love with Minnesota. And I said I was going to move here when I graduated from high school.
Who's your aunt and your cousin? Who were they?
Sarojini Vincent Greer. She's a member of our church as well. Okay. And my aunt's name is, here you go. My uncle's name is Charles English and Agnes English. Charles English is the brother of Bill English. So Bill
okay.
Now Bill English is a mentor for me as well.
Yep.
So you start to see these people, Bill English, Busi Zulu, Notando Zulu, the people who were here and what they do in the community put an expectation on me when I got here. But so I was recruited to play. I had a full ride basketball scholarship to St. Cloud State. Turned it down to stay home, close to a girlfriend. And so once we graduated, I moved here. And so then moving here with a bachelor's degree in organizational communication, could not find a job anywhere. I came here, no job, started working at North Commons as a security person, got a free membership at the North Community Y from Clarence Hightower, and I coached basketball for my free membership. So the Y, Northside Y, was the first place I went when I moved here. So now you start to see how I started to become connected to this Northside community, kind of in a funny kind of way. At that time, I went to New Bethel Baptist Church because my Aunt Agnes went there. And so they were meeting in North Commons. So now I've coached North Commons basketball. I do therapy at the Urban League. My church is in Northside. I'm committed to the Northside because I have been given tools and I understand that there's nothing more important than community. And I don't care how much I thrive or how successful I am. It doesn't matter if my people are suffering. And it's my job to go and give back and to help and do all I can. And that's kind of, I hope that answered your question long.
Oh, that's a great answer. It's a wonderful answer, man. That's why I love my job, is I get to ask questions that people can flow with, and my goal is to have, my guests, my people I'm talking to just tell their story, because our stories are powerful, right?
Yes.
And I think healing is in the story.
Yes.
Power is in the story, and the pathway to our future, to what we are becoming, is involved in the story as well. I say it this way. I say that all that has happened before us really pours into us. Yes. And so all around you are the thoughts, the energies, the ideas, the spirit of those ancestors.
Yes, sir.
They never leave you and they never let you down. And each waking moment, they are with you and present and guiding you. You simply need to be aware, attuned, listen,
Right.
respectful, and they are, you know, uh, partners in guiding you
Yes.
to the power of the moment.
Yes.
And the moment that we're in right now is the gateway to eternity.
Yes.
Eternity passes through us each, and we represent, what happened in the beginning, and we represent what will ever happen. So
Absolutely.
this moment, every moment, is a moment filled with power and promise and potential. And we simply have to be aware, attuned, and be prepared to serve. That's what I say.
Yes,
And
sir.
I'm hearing you say the same thing in language and story
Yes.
that you bring to it. So uh, the idea of family, what I kept hearing, Brother Darrell, was expectation.
Yes.
Your parents and your mom, and your dads and your community had high expectations of you, and
Yes.
you were totally aware of the
Yes.
expectations all the time. Wasn't like it was a secret. Everybody
Right.
knew what was expected of you, and you knew for sure as well.
Yes.
Talk about that as part of how that guides us so that we can navigate challenges, crisis, stress, and be successful as residents, as brothers, sisters, as husbands, wives, as members of community. How does that figure into our ability to navigate, to be sane in a hostile environment?
I would say this, Mr. McFarlane, a very critical thing happened to me when I met the Zulu family, and I have to always honor them.
Mm-hmm.
I told you I grew up in the church. So when I moved here, I had a very, very, very strong sense of who I was in Christ. And because I knew who I was in Christ, I knew the expectations was to build God's kingdom. I got that. That was drilled into my head. I understood that. Yet when I met the Zulu family, the first thing they introduced me to was Kwanzaa. So you probably been at their house for one of their Kwanzaa, one of their Kwanzaa nights.
Yep.
So you know how powerful that is. You know how powerful it is to hold that unity cup, to drink from it, to pour it to the ancestors. But what was more important than that was the principles of Kwanzaa and what I learned past Dr. King and Harriet Tubman and some of the well-known African-American heroes. I started learning about the Black Panthers in a whole different kind of way. Tuskegee Airmen, Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, just W.B.E. Du Bois, Booker T, all these. But not only did I learn them, I learned some of their philosophies. And so now you start to take on an image of, and what I told Mr. Zulu was, I said, man, you're creating a monster. I already think I'm all that from a spiritual standpoint. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to give me some red, black, and green to go with this spiritual piece. Man, you're creating somebody who is absolutely unstoppable from any ideology anybody gives me. They cannot handle it because it gives you some expectations that you cannot stay here because your ancestors have paid a way. Mm-hmm. They have paid and paved a way for you to be where you are, and you cannot take it for granted. And it's your mandate to go and pull everybody else you can pull with you. Whether they come to Christ or not, you still owe it to the community to be a community builder and to not just be a hoarder, but you got to share, you got to give it away. And so how I try to tell these teachers, one of the most critical mistakes you make is not giving my children expectations. Mm-hmm. Because when you build a relationship with a child, they will bring their game up to any expectation you give them. I promise you, I don't care if they have a learning disability. I don't care if they're autistic. I don't care if they're ADHD. I don't care if they've been sexually abused multiple times. There's something about that relationship and the expectations that you have from a relational leadership piece that just drives you. It's an incredible force. And I'm not going to say it's as strong as the Holy Spirit, but I'm going to say it is strong. And I have both of those things bubbling on the inside of me that on a constant basis. And so there's a passion that I have for my people and for people in general. But I think when you talk about those expectations, I can look back and I say, I'm working on my doctorate degree right now, and I'm not into titles. I promise you all that. That doesn't matter to me. But a friend of mine who has his PhD said, Daryl, you have to complete this because the kids that you come in contact with will never, ever meet Dr. King, but they will meet Dr. Gillespie. And meeting Dr. Gillespie, you will in turn meet Dr. King because Dr. King has put something on the inside of me. And in them meeting me as a doctor, it will let them know that they can ascribe through a pandemic, through whatever's going on, you can still thrive in a world that hates you or wants to keep you oppressed or that's jealous of you. And what those expectations say to me, no matter what they put on you, you still have to crash through it, and you can. And so I think that's the importance of those expectations.
One of the things that I went through was on a tour of charter schools in Chicago. I think we visited the Pritzker School in the south side of Chicago, and the school leader was showing us around, and the question of expectations came up. I might have asked a question, I might have made the observation. One thing that's obvious to me is that you have high expectations because they have signs and placards and posters all over the building reminding children of who they are and who they are becoming and why they are becoming and why they have to act this way and why this is the right thing to say, the right approach, the right method for responding to an issue, a challenge, an opportunity, all of that kind of programming. And so I said, I'm really pleased to see that you are setting very, very high expectations. So the guy said, yeah, expectations, but the other half of that is inspection. Not only do you have high expectations, but you got to look at it. You got to look at it and look at it hard, right? And look at it often, measure, so that you know that you are meeting the expectations. Right. And you can have the expectations if you don't have a process or a system for ascertaining your success on that path, then it's all for naught. And so I think that's got to be part of your training and your strategy as well, is it?
Absolutely. And if you meet anybody, any leader in our church, they will tell you that Pastor G is always about training and always about teaching. And that's why we cannot, as the leaders, we cannot afford to cut corners because we have to make sure we do our job well, that we can train well. And I think when somebody is trained well, it gives them the ability to be competent at what they do. I mean, so many times we live in a microwavable world where people want skills easy. I was just telling somebody, you can go online and get a pastoral degree or get a minister's license, and you haven't even done anything. But you have to be able to go out here and you have to be able to get cussed out, spit on, talked about, dogged out. That's part of the training. But you still have to bounce back, and you have to have a place that you can process. Part of that inspection process is about failing forward, because none of us knew how to do. When you did your first interview, I'm sure you could find some holes. I mean, there's always areas of improvement. And I think you have to have a safe place that you can come and talk about mistakes, talk about the inspection process, talking about looking in the mirror and see what you really see, your strength and your areas of improvement. Because if you always think you've made it, there's no way you're going to be successful, because there's always room for growth. And you have to have some people. That goes back to those expectations and people in your life that you can go back to. Some people don't want to listen to anybody because they know everything, but you never can be a place where you lose your sense of being able to learn. And as a leader and the head of a church, I have to always provide a place for people to grow and learn. And that's, again, why I can't stay stagnant. I don't want to go to school anymore, but I still want to, after I get this dissertation done, I still want to continue to learn, because that helps that inspection process that you're talking about.
You know, one of the things that I talk about, because we all, you and I all hear people talk about the lost generation, or kids out of control, or things aren't the way they used to be, and et cetera. And what do we do? And we often say that with, you know, a sense of despair, or a sense of loss, hand wringing, and a sense of resignation that the world has gone to hell in a handbasket and there's nothing we can do about it. And that's a terrible feeling. And it's not a feeling that produces confidence, awareness, knowledge, and joy. It's a,
Right.
it's a feeling that engenders fear, fearfulness, and atrophy, and indecision, and surrender, right? And it's terrible. So the question is, when I was in Ghana on several occasions, I went to a series of regular meetings with elders in the political world and chiefs and kings in different tribal communities. And what I loved about it was that in every meeting, there was a protocol. There was a way to start the meeting, and words delivered by everybody, variations on the theme, but the words had to do with acknowledging the ancestors, first of all, and acknowledging the people in the room, and acknowledging the sanctity of the meeting, of the gathering, and expressing an intent that our thoughts and ideas be guided by a sense of purpose and a sense of truth, and that the outcomes from this move our issue, our people, our community forward, and in a way that honors the investment, the sacrifice of those who came before, and that also honors our obligation to those who will follow. So every meeting put in perfect context the importance of the truth of this moment. This conversation, this gathering is important because, as I said before, everything that ever happened from the beginning of time comes down to this moment, to this breath. And everything that can ever happen beyond this moment emanates through this moment. This is the gateway, right? And so it's a sense of feeling and knowing the I am of the moment. You know, what does it mean to say I am? And not about ego I am, but about the eternal truth of my being and existence, right? So the question is, can we, Brother Darrell, should we try to generate a protocol for engagement among our people, where when we meet, you know, kind of like DAP or handshake, whatever else, but not only do we do that, but there is also a articulated expectation of what our being together means. So it's not just chit chat, and chit chat is okay, but we have to recognize the gravity of every moment, and even the healing gravity of joy. Right. The joy is available every second, right? And how do we employ joy to both heal and reflect healing, and to heal others and ourselves, and get a sense of what our mission is, why we're here? What do you think about that?
Well, I think a lot of things, and I hope I don't miss everything that went through my head. But when you said joy, I think joy is something that we have to define, because a lot of people define joy as happiness, and joy is not happiness. Joy, to me, is an underlining trust that your higher power, my higher power being my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, will always bring me any situation out, and it will always work out for my good. And I can be joyful. James 1 and 2, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptation. And at the end it says, because faith has to have its perfect work. And so joy is something that we can always have. And when you talk about when I meet my brother and I meet my sister or meet anybody, that there has to be a certain level of understanding of we are together. And I think part of that goes to us learning our history. And so getting people, we have to carry that for those of us who don't have it, and spreading it, number one, I believe, is through our actions and our care. So when we talk about this is a lost generation, if you can say those words, you are really bringing something into the atmosphere that shouldn't be brought into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. I don't think anything is garbage. I don't think there's any person that's worth throwing away. And I also think this generation, they have some different values, the ones that they are saying that are lost. And it's our job, again, it's our job to listen to their values. And some of their values are legit, even when they go against some of the stuff we believe. And we have to be able to be okay with coexisting with some norms that may go against the church, that may go against some things, until we can build some solidarity. But sometimes we are so stuck that it has to be done this way. When I'm giving you dap and saying I care about you, what you're saying and what you're feeling on an emotional gut level is, I'm just doing this, and I really think you a low down dirty dog because you out here doing things to our children and you selling drugs. Folks feel that. You cannot hide. I'm gonna tell you something about folks on the street. Since we're doing this kind of work, people on the street peep your game. They know it, especially us preachers. They be trying to act like we really trying to save souls, but we really out there just so people can say we out there. Get out of here with that. You got to be out here for real, and they will peep you and they will play you and they'll dismiss you. I can guarantee you, because of what lies on the inside of me and because I care about people so much, I can go in any area, in any city. And again, I'm going to use wisdom, but I believe I can connect to anybody because at the primal level of who I am, I believe everybody is somebody. And it's my job to pull out of them the greatness. We all have greatness on the inside of us. And when we really start to really believe that, you will be amazed at the kind of interactions that you can have with people just because they can feel that you really care without y'all even knowing each other. I could be in Walmart, I could be in a store and just speak to people and they just start talking to me. And I listen because I know what they're feeling is something bigger than both of us, because something has put us together at that particular time. And it's my job to know when that time comes, and I have to pounce on that opportunity, because that could be a matter of life and death. My simple smile, my simple conversation could save their lives. And I understand that. And we'll never see that on TV. It'll never be on the news. They may never see me again, but I don't care, because the greater good is that person got something that they needed just because of our interaction.
And so is that the work of healing? Is that the work of therapy? Absolutely. And the work of both of your professions?
Yes.
And so how do you bring that to a person who is in crisis? The person discovers he or she has COVID-19. And maybe that person, let's do two people. Maybe one is 70, 75, and has a history of underlying diabetes, underlying conditions. How does therapy help that person understand his or her situation? Same question for maybe even a 17-year-old who's a basketball player, doesn't feel symptoms, might not know he's a carrier, but he's a super spreader, right? And at some point in time, somebody's got to come up to him and have it go off in his head that he should get tested, right? And then the third part of this is, how do we begin the discussion in our community? And you brought it up about vaccines, because there is a well-founded skepticism, but at what point in time do we use knowledge, science, strategy, common sense to weigh what the options are and weigh them in a way that leads to longevity and preservation of life, and reducing our role in damaging or exposing other people to life-threatening situations and illnesses? Big question.
Yeah, those are big questions, and my answers are simple answers, and I hope they're not too simple. I think anytime, whether I'm dealing with the 70-year-old or the 17-year-old, we have to be honest about what could potentially happen. And when I say be honest, you have to say, if you come out of this, this, and this. If you don't come out of this, this, and this. And so we have to be honest that
the main thing is to know that this is an if situation, and that
absolutely.
you might not come out.
And we have to be able to be honest to say, sometimes bad things are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, especially talking to church folk, because again, they want to make deals with God. They want God to bring them out. And sometimes I have to say, God's will may not be for this person to live. It may not be for you to live. But what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to have a conversation in the midst of your situation. What can you do now? How do we handle this? And then on the other side, if you come out of it, how do you want to happen? How do you want to be different? How do you want to do certain things? And so it still comes down to voice, expectations again. What do you expect? What are you going to do? Is your life over at 70? Because COVID is this. I could say I had COVID and I'm good. And I could say that. But that might not be the answer for somebody else. And maybe that might not even be the thing to say. But I think we have to really look at life and look at situations realistically. Even with all these folks that have all this greatness and all these things in them, sometimes you have made decisions that have consequences. And we have to have a talk about these consequences of things that have affected your life and how do we continue to move, which leads me to this thing about vaccines. That's a very, very hard situation. My daughter asked me yesterday, Dad, you gonna take the vaccine? I said, I have to be honest. I said, I don't know. I don't. And I'm not going to get on the show and say, as a leader, people are watching me. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, history says, I don't know. Science mm-hmm. says, take it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, because I don't know how they feel, how folks feel about me. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be a guinea pig. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I do want to be healthy. And so we are caught in a quandary about what to really do. I haven't taken a flu shot in I don't know how many years mm-hmm. because I don't know what they putting in me. I haven't gotten the flu. That's my testimony. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, Mr. McFarlane. That's a tough question.
Well, let me tell you my story, just because it's worth saying. And I think it's important that we have this conversation. My daughter and my wife, we've had this discussion today. I can tell you that I've been very clear that I will take the vaccination as soon as it's available. And I think about it for several reasons. Number one is I do get the flu. And so for the past X number of years, I'm always early to get the flu shot once or twice in the winter time. And it has stood me well. But what I really remember, Daryl, this was before you were born. I remember being, I think, 6 or 7 years old in Kansas City, where I grew up. And I remember them doing mass polio vaccinations. I must have been 6 years old. And polio, the polio epidemic was like the COVID epidemic is. A lot of people were being stricken, deformed for life. Many were dying, children in particular. And I remember probably a 2 or 3 day process where they would take all the kids, summertime, still not summertime, but might have been early in the school year when it's still warm, or in the spring when it was warm, before school was out. But all of us lined up in the field on the side of, the concrete on the side of the school, the playground, what it was. And a nurse and some doctors with syringes, and I believe they were either using alcohol or flames. I can't remember which. And I can't remember, I'm sure back then they weren't doing individual needles for kids.
Okay, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Might have been 100 of us lined up and each of us getting the shot with the same needle, with the only cleaning being done, maybe alcohol or a flame or something like that. But I knew people and about people who had polio and how that had disfigured, transformed their lives or killed them. And I wanted to live, right?
Right, yes.
And I felt comfortable and confident, and I moved to that treatment with the confidence that this is the pathway to my maintaining a long life.
Yes, okay.
And I'm glad I decided to take the polio shot.
Okay.
And the conditions at that time were more like what we're talking about, the memory of what happened in Tuskegee and other places where we might have been experimented on. That was more prevalent then than now.
It is now.
I think we have more knowledge now and more power to challenge and to question, to ask, to do the research now. So I think we're in a different place and different time. But that doesn't mean we don't feel the same way we felt then.
Right.
So
Yes,
I think the feelings you're describing are feelings that are valid, that we got to discuss and figure out how do we have a conversation that allows people to make their own decision, hopefully the right decision, to protect themselves, their families, and to keep them from being a threat or danger to other people in the community as well. Right. But I can tell you that Al McFarlane is going to take the vaccination the first minute it's available. Okay. And I'm going to be encouraging others to do the same.
And again, your decision will impact my decision. It will, because I need to hear some people say again, who is in my environment. Everybody in my environment is like, nope, 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 no. And so again, when you hear the story, it makes it different. It's tough. and I've had COVID and I'm good. I'm like, man, but I still have people. And here where we have to take our position when it's not fair. You have to take your position and know you're leading a group of people that you have influence on. And the way I am, Mr. McFarlane, I don't ever want to make somebody do something because I do it. One thing my mom gave us was voice. And I grew up in an era where kids were seen and not heard. She was very intentional about letting us speak our truth. And I am very intentional about being a person that gives people to make sure that they have choices. And I have to say, I have to be able to encourage people. Even if I don't, I can't dog somebody out for not. And hopefully I'll be wise enough to make the right decision for myself as well. But I have to understand, you have to, because I could cause somebody not to take it, that need to take it. And I don't want to have that on my head either.
And my thinking is that I don't want to tell people to do something I wouldn't do. For that reason, I'm going to the first opportunity, because, and that's again informed by my experience as a 6-year-old, you know, and my witness of the power of medicine and my trust, my faith in the creators investing knowledge in humans, in our community, and that the knowledge that is flowing from science is the work of the creator.
Yes,
that's God's work. Yes. And so I'm looking at it that way. But listen, this has been a great conversation. We're going to do this again because I think it's important to keep this conversation going. And you know, one of the things I want to say is how important it is as a business person and as an elder in the community to recognize the value that you bring as a professional, the question of therapy. And I can't say enough how important it is that our community reach out to professionals like you, to your colleagues over at Braken's Psychological Services. You know, we need to figure out how we use the gifts that our people have. And what you've been describing for the past hour is the presence of a gift and the power of that gift to bring people to their best selves, right? To identify and call forth in them the who they truly are. Right? Actualization, right? And elimination of double-mindedness, of
Yes.
insecurity, of indecision, discovery of purpose,
Yes.
intentionality, and therein the discovery of power.
Yes.
You know, the presence of the Creator in you to be and do, and to reflect the will of creation itself. So I want to applaud you and Dr. Breveda Akinsanya and your team over at Brakens for being in the field. I want to encourage our people to call up
Yes.
Brakens Consulting, Brakens Psychological Services, and
Yes.
other Black professionals in the mental health and health field. And we need to rely on our people and
Yes.
recognize that we're simply human beings, and our bodies can hurt, and our minds can hurt, and our spirits can hurt. But
Yes.
there is healing everywhere.
Yes.
Reach out to each other and do the business of being our own solutions
Yes.
to our situation. What do you think about that?
I agree wholeheartedly. I believe there is a balm in Gilead. And I think we need to understand that this is important work. And really, when you talk about context, and we didn't talk about context from a therapeutic standpoint, to be able to be in relationship with a therapist who can truly understand context on multiple levels, I think is invaluable. And to be able to talk to somebody that looks like you and can kind of connect with your experience like that is extremely important.
We're out of time, but this has been a great conversation. Brother Daryl Gillespie, Pastor Daryl Gillespie, name the church and the website and make the invitation.
Proverbs Christian Fellowship, PCF Church, mpls.com. Check us out. You're welcome to come. We are doing live services. We are practicing COVID protocol. So we sit every other bench. You got to wear your mask. We take your temperature. But we want you. We meet you where you are is our motto. And so we come and have a Proverbs experience. Thank you, Mr. McFarlane.
And